24 chefs, 24 culinary showdowns for 24 hours straight. Which chef will outcook, outpace, outlast the competition?
No chef
Escapes the clock. All new 24 and 24, Last Chef Standing, Sunday night at 8. See it first on Food Network. Stream next day on Max.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
In 2019, director Sam Mendes and star George Mackay gave the world a singular take on the Forgotten War.
In 2025, we try an American single malt from a new-to-us brand.
The film is 1917.
The whiskey is Hirsch, The Departure.
And we'll review them both. This is
The Film and Whiskey Podcast. Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And Brad G, we are starting to wind down season 9 of this podcast. You and I have been working behind the scenes, working on season 10. And before we give away what season 10 is about, Brad, we got to get through these last 4 movies here. And I am freaking pumped to talk about 1917, one of my very favorite movies of the last decade or so. A movie that I was significantly pumped for you to go see in the theater, and then super bummed that you didn't love it as much as me. We'll revisit all of our feelings on this movie here in a bit. Brad, what are your general impressions of season number 9? How's this been for you?
I think it's been a lot of fun. We obviously have traversed the decades in this podcast. I think, Gold Rush from 28 is our oldest
25,
movie?
I think, the Gold Rush?
Oh, that was 25.
I think so,
wow.
Yeah.
So from 1925, we have now come up to 2024 as our most recent film. So I was a very big fan of sticking to, 2004 to 2024 for a whole season, because I do think it helps us flesh out what does it mean to be classic cinema in the modern era. I think it's been a really fun experiment.
Yeah, and folks, if this is your first time joining us, welcome into Film and Whiskey. We review movies, we review whiskey. The premise of the show is that I grew up a huge movie nerd. Brad is new to a lot of these movies, but the two of us met in college and in grad school. We've done a ton of work on textual criticism. We love diving deep into, for us, it was the books of the Bible. Now we're applying that same logic to films. So it's been a fun ride going through these 9 seasons with you. This season, we've been looking at films from the last 20 years and asking the critical question, is this movie a modern classic? Now, in order to determine that, what we've been doing is going through 4 criteria. Is this movie a Best Picture nominee? Did this movie make $100 million at the U.S. box office? Is it in the Letterboxd Top 250? Is it in the IMDb Top 250? Brad, I don't think this is a Letterboxd movie, but I am pretty sure the 3 other boxes are checked for 1917.
Yeah, it made a lot of money at the box office for us, kind of a quiet-esque drama military film. It made $446 million worldwide. 159 of that was domestic.
Pretty good for a World War I movie. World War I is a very slept-on time in military history, I feel like. It's super overshadowed by World War II. And that's primarily because I think that, obviously, World War II more recent than World War I, but the American involvement in World War II has become such a part of, the American myth. We really hold up World War II and our involvement in that on a pedestal. And I think World War I, by comparison, it feels like a much more European conflict, which is silly to say, but even this movie, it's about Brits fighting in World War I. And I just don't think that we have a lot of great World War I examples in cinema, especially in the last, 50 years.
Yeah, it feels like a forgotten war. But you're right. World War II, at the end of the day, I think one of the reasons is it's a lot cooler to
It sounds like we're
write
power
about.
ranking wars here.
We are 100%. Vietnam War is below these two.
For sure,
Korean
for
War
sure.
is somewhere in the middle. Here's the thing: World War II is cooler to depict. Like
Yep.
World War I is a bunch of trenches and mud and barbed wire, and like the technology difference between like the biplanes of World War I and the fighters of World War II is so vast that like dogfights are way cooler in World War II than they would have been in World War I. And so even from a media standpoint, it's like, yeah, sure, it's a little easier to make a film or write a book about World War II than it would be about World War I.
Well, I think you bring up a really great point that kind of introduces two huger points we have to discuss today. Anytime we talk about war films on this podcast, we always bring up the famous Truffaut quote where he talks about how it's impossible to make an anti-war film just because the medium of film makes things so entertaining that by even depicting the horrors of war, you're so bought into it that in some ways it is participatory and you become a champion of war. I don't know if either of us fully agrees with that, but I think that what we've seen in the last, 25-ish years is that in order to try to mitigate that, filmmakers take a very neutral stance on the politics of war and instead just try to depict the day-to-day lives of the soldiers. This was a major point in our Saving Private Ryan episode where we were trying to argue against the read on that film that it's just kind of jingoistic. And I think Sam Mendes does something similar here. And the way that he does that, the second point, is you're right, World War I, super boring conflict to portray on screen because you're just in a ditch the whole time. Like, it's trench warfare. And so in order to fight against the boredom and the repetitiveness and the visual lack of interest there, he does this thing where he's like, I'm going to make a one-shot movie. And I think, Brad, that kind of sets us up for Brad Explains, because I want to get to the Sam Mendes of it all after you kind of cast the vision here. So let's throw over to our first segment of the day, which we call Brad Explains.
Brad's gonna give us the movie plot with only 60 seconds ticking on the clock. So let's go ahead and hear your take with this little segment that we call Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part of the show where Brad breaks down the plot of the film that he has just seen, often for the first time. I am pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly. You saw this in the theater, right?
I sure did. Yep.
And you have not seen it since?
I've not seen it since. Yeah, this is my first time since 2019. I think of the Best Picture nominees, I saw this and Jojo Rabbit in theaters.
We have really been knocking out the 2019 nominees across the seasons here, man.
It was a heck of a year, man.
What a great year.
Ford v. Ferrari. Yeah.
Parasite. Marriage Story. 1917. Like, a darn good year for film.
Dude, Parasite was such a good movie, man. Oh, I love that movie.
I know you do, man. I was pulling for 1917, and I know that I am like persona non grata by taking this movie over Parasite, a beloved classic of world cinema. But I've said multiple times my weird experience watching Parasite has kind of forever tainted it for me. So this was a much purer experience in the theater for me. And I got to say, man,
be world cinema, correct? British director.
British
subject.
It's an American movie, though. Like, this is very much backed by America. And so, Brad, you've seen it twice now. I don't really think this is a movie that requires 60 full seconds, but the minute is yours to spoil the events of this film. Folks, if you have not seen 1917, I would highly recommend going and watching the film and then coming back and joining us for the rest of the episode. Brad, 1 minute and go.
1917 is a film that follows Lance Corporals Blake and Schofield as they travel through no man's land during World War I in order to try and stop Sherlock Holmes from sending his men to certain death.
I like how even on the subject of war, you can find a way to be a little cheeky in the way that you do things, Brad.
You're welcome. Who, me?
Yeah, I know.
No.
1917, and another way of explaining it is like two young British actors share the screen momentarily with every major British actor. You know what I mean? Like it's
every male.
Every
British
male,
actor.
right? Yeah, Tilda Swinton doesn't show up in this one anywhere, but she probably could have if she wanted to. You know?
It wouldn't surprise me, Bob.
All right, let's dive into talking about the film itself. And I think that we kind of have to go out of order a little bit today because it's necessitated by the type of movie this is. I said a little bit ago, the movie is filmed and presented as if it is done in one shot. There are some cleverly designed transitions between shots, but this is a repairing of Sam Mendes and the cinematographer Roger Deakins. And I think when you present a movie as if it's done in one shot, a la Birdman, and you're the director of a movie, you are inviting any attention that you get as a result. Like you're clearly asking for people's attention. The camera becomes a character in the movie, and you as the director are really putting yourself out there saying, look at what I can do. And the interesting thing with Sam Mendes is that a lot of critics do not like this guy. I don't know a ton about his personal life, so I don't know if there's, maybe he's a terrible person in real life, but I think kind of unfairly, Sam Mendes gets shat on by the critical community. Because this is a guy that's made a lot of really good movies, and I've struggled for a long time to try to pin down exactly what it is that critics hate about the guy. And I think I'm starting to have it click into view. Brad, are you familiar at all with the sort of critical campaign against Sam Mendes as a director?
The Mendesian angst that exists within the film critic community.
Is it Mendesian?
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 Perhaps.
I like it.
No, I'm honestly not. I'm trying to think if I've seen any of his other films than American Beauty, Skyfall, and 1917. I mean, is that a good representation of his filmography, would you say?
I think so, too. I mean, like, the only other two films that I would say we really should watch at some point for the podcast would be Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks and Jarhead with Jake Gyllenhaal. Those are probably like his big five movies, I would say.
Now, I will say, Jarhead, for being what I would imagine is a lost to time, like just another war movie, easily has one of the best marketing campaigns of any film, because I still remember the previews for Jarhead. And the reason I bring that up is I think one of the reasons 1917 made so much daggone money is because it had a killer, just the trailers for 1917 were so freaking cool, dude.
Yep. And I think that kind of gets me back to the, like, what is it that people don't like about Mendes? Because as I remember the 1917 trailers, they had like a sort of ticking clock effect going on in the background, very reminiscent of like The Dark Knight and Inception. And I kind of wonder, I think they were trying to position this movie as like Christopher Nolan-esque, coming off the heels of Dunkirk, which people really didn't love. And this is like, hey, this is a much more down the middle, suspense-driven, race against the clock movie that you wish Christopher Nolan made, and here is light beer version of Christopher Nolan making it. And I think that's kind of what I've come down on about why critics don't like Sam Mendes, is that he came from theater. He was a really well-regarded director in London, and I think that he knows how to like really mount a very handsomely made production. Like his movies always look impeccable. He knows how to use the camera, and they always have the air of prestige. But even among the movies I just named, like this movie, Skyfall, American Beauty, Jarhead, and then whatever the other one was that we were talking about.
Road to Perdition.
Road to Perdition. Like, I don't know that I would call him an auteur in the same way that we talk about like a Tarantino or a Wes Anderson or even a Scorsese, where it's like, oh, this is clearly a movie made by a guy with a point of view. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. I think that American Beauty, of the three that I've seen, probably has the most distinct vibe to it that makes it feel like it stands out from other films. I don't know if 1917 or Skyfall like really shout to the heavens, this is a Mendesian picture.
Mm-hmm.
There's just
Mendesian is the coolest term we've ever come up with on this show, Brad.
easily.
It's kind of similar to how Sam Mendes is perceived. It's like Mendesian sounds like the coolest, deepest, most intricate thing you could discuss. And then you're like, oh, it's just a Sam Mendes movie? Okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the fascinating thing is you seem like you kind of agree with it when I know that you, in fact, don't.
I think it's a compelling argument, and I do agree with it. I just don't know if it matters. Like, at the end of the day, if a guy is like a really good, I wouldn't even call him like a journeyman director, because he's not just like a hired gun. He really puts care and attention into his movies. I don't think they have a personal touch, but I'm also like, he comes out with a movie and I'm like, oh, a new Sam Mendes movie. I'm going to see that. Like, because I know that it's just going to be a well-crafted movie that had a lot of care put into it. And I think that's an increasingly rare thing these days.
It's interesting. The way that we are talking about him reminds me of how we talk about Rob Reiner.
Yeah, although I would say Rob Reiner was much more of a like, we need a guy who's like a competent director.
Right.
With like no visual flair. You know? Yeah,
that's the thing, though, is like Rob Reiner was the hired gun. Sam Mendes isn't. But the way we describe the output, I feel like it's kind of similar. Like, super well competent, knows how to make a great movie. It just doesn't quite reach the heights or have the depth necessarily that would make them a A-tier director.
Yeah. And yet, with Mendes, he has that added prestige of like, I have won Best Picture. I have won Best Director. My films are constantly nominated for Academy Awards. So I think the
people
pushback,
are just annoyed that he like won with American Beauty early in his career.
Yeah, people really hate that movie, which I still think I like that movie a lot. I don't get it. But yeah, I think he's perceived as like the Oscar bait guy now, which is just hilarious to me because, you know, and
isn't everybody like, that would be like calling an NFL team Super Bowl bait worthy. Like
they're just setting themselves up to win a championship. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why can't they be more like the Browns?
Yeah, exactly. I really don't understand the Oscar bait. Like, how dare you play to the things you know will win you the best, like most important award in our industry.
Yeah, I don't know, man. And I think that that's a good jumping off point to actually talk about the movie, which exists for me outside of this conversation. This is just a really well-made, almost real-time race against the clock movie where you've got maybe the best cinematographer of all time flexing his muscles. And the reason I brought up the Mendes thing is that it's really funny to go through reviews for this movie where the praise is always filtered around Mendes because it's like the critics don't want to give him credit for anything. And they're like, well, this is actually a Roger Deakins showcase. And the fact that Roger Deakins figured out how to do all this is insane. And like, maybe that's true. Maybe behind the scenes, Roger Deakins was just like shadow directing this movie. I don't freaking know. But like, it's just hilarious to me that we want to give credit to Deakins. And it is, you know, let's be clear, a huge accomplishment, technically, this movie.
Totally.
But like, the fact that Sam Mendes was able to orchestrate every piece, every instrument in the orchestra here, right? And not get any credit for it. I don't know that there's a lot of directors who are kind of shafted that way, the way that Mendes is.
Absolutely. Yeah, it feels like one of those confirmation bias type of things where it's like, well, you know, I expect Scorsese to make an incredible, deep, beautiful movie, so the DP doesn't get any real credit for what they do. But Sam Mendes, meh. Deakins did the whole thing.
Now, when it comes to the movie itself, what I love about the gimmick, and we should just start talking about the gimmick here. It's a one-shot movie. What I love about the gimmick is that it really only works if you're not trying to do a ton of exposition. And so from the get-go, it's like, there will be dialogue in this movie. A lot of the dialogue is going to be like banal day-to-day conversation between these two guys walking across a field. And that makes it work because it really elongates like the boredom of walking across a field, and then a shot rings out, and now we're running across a field. And I think that plopping us into the middle of both of their tours, if you want to call it that too, it's not like these are privates who are showing up for their first day of combat. Like, the movie opens on George Mackay's face. He's sleeping against a tree, and immediately the camera pulls back. Both of these guys are revealed, and it's like, boom, we've got a job for you. And so, like, literally 45 seconds into the movie, the plot is in motion, and now you're just watching the trip to execute this mission. It is such a bare bones plot, and that's the only thing to me that makes the gimmick of the movie work.
See, I found myself kind of in the opposite place, where the gimmick of a one-shot take is that it allows you to really just like sit with people. And I think that it works way better when you're in like a deep, tense, dramatic conversation between two people. And you just never get that in this. And I'm not disagreeing that like those moments where he's talking about cherry trees and the different types, and like there's plenty of small moments that you help you fall in love with the characters. But I think a one-shot movie is best utilized when you have just a really super compelling character who's really deeply wrestling with like wild internal realities. And I think that that's why it works for something like Birdman versus something like 1917. To me, this kind of felt like watching a video game.
Oh, interesting.
Where it's like every once in a while you have, a quick cutscene with like Benedict Cumberbatch or Mark Strong. And then the rest of it, you're following a no-name character that you're playing as, and you're trying to do your mission, and it feels like a ton of cutscenes with like player engagement stuff in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's a really good criticism of the movie. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's also because I'm not a video game player. And you're right, like there's definitely a first-person shooter kind of thing going on in this movie, especially in the way that the camera kind of floats. Sometimes it'll look elsewhere, as it makes its transitions, and then it'll kind of drift back to our heroes. I think that's really like a pretty astute criticism, Brad. And it kind of begs the question of like, if we wanted to do a real-time movie, which this like is close enough to being a real-time movie, we don't have to do a real-time movie and a one-take movie. So it begs the question of like, why are we doing the one-shot thing? And I think if I was Sam Mendes, the way I would answer that is like, I'm trying to replicate the rhythms of the day in the life of a soldier, where it's like nothing's happening and then everything's happening. And I don't want to introduce cuts to kind of speed up that timeline. I want to give a sense of like, we are always on edge. There is danger lurking around every corner. Even as I walk across this field, a shot could ring out and I could be dead. And I want to keep the audience on their toes by giving them so much visual information to process all the time that they have to keep looking in the corners of the frame or whatever. I just wonder, like, does the gimmick get in the way of the story they're trying to tell? Or on the other hand, is there not enough story to tell in this movie? And so you notice the gimmick more.
All I know is, as you were talking, something you said made me think about, like, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Can you imagine the trailer for this, where one of the characters is like, is overdubbing the reading Psalm 23?
Yep.
And like just slowly backs out from like a nice white flowery field to show like the trenches and the no man's land. And it's like oh dude, what a trailer.
No, but it would have to be one of those trailers they do now where there's like a sad piano version of a song. And it's just like one piano note that's going like, dong, dong. And it's got the guy singing like, I'm going there to see my and then it's just this, like Benedict Cumberbatch reciting Psalm 23, and that's the trailer for the movie.
Dude, and it would be epic, and I don't know how we don't work in the industry.
Yes, we have solved every problem with this film already.
Oh man, the gimmick like works. I think that's the weird thing is I don't think he should have made this a one-shot movie, and yet I think it works. Like, to capture the story that they wrote, I do think that this was an effective use of the camera because it allows you to feel the totality of what he goes through. It allows you to feel the weight of what he has seen. By the end of the film, man, when he meets Blake's brother, which, the Lance Corporal Blake dies about halfway through the film. When he meets his brother and tells him that he was a good man and that he told funny stories, like, you feel that impact because you've spent time with Blake. You've heard him tell a few funny stories. You have an understanding of his character and how devastating it would be to hear about his loss.
Well, and I think that, again, it's one of the benefits of the not ever cutting away thing, that, like, the actor who plays his older brother is always in the shot there after the news is delivered. And Schofield kind of starts walking away, and you watch the guy kind of recede into the background, but he's still grappling with the news. And then he comes back and tells him he was a good man. He saved my life. Watching the emotions get processed in real time and being forced to sit with them, I think really does make this a much more emotionally impactful movie than it got credit for. I found myself really overcome with emotion at the end of this film. And Brad, before we go to break, we haven't really talked about anything except Sam Mendes and the gimmick yet. But, like, I have found lately that it's harder and harder for me to watch war movies. There's a movie that just came out this past weekend from the filmmaker Alex Garland called Warfare, and it is based on a true story. And it is it's not a one-shot movie, but from my understanding, it's a near real-time movie that is a true story about these American soldiers in, I believe, Iraq, trying to get out of being pinned down. And that's it. That's the whole movie. It's supposed to be absolutely brutal, and it is being hailed as one of the best war movies of the last, 10, 15 years. And I have tried to get myself up to seeing it the last 4 nights in a row, and I just can't do it, man. For some reason, I can't bring myself to get motivated to watch something as heavy as a war movie. And I think, to this movie's credit, yes, there's a gimmick. Yes, there's a video game kind of element to it, but it never shies away from how emotionally distressing all of this is. This was quite a challenging experience to sit through for me, Brad.
For me, it's those moments where he, like, puts his hand inside of a corpse. Or he's crawling over the bloated corpses of peasants who are in the river, that when he's, like, weeping as he crawls out of the river, or at the end of the film when he sits against the tree and, like, you just see him completely drained of life, you understand why he gave away his medal for a bottle of wine. You get the angst that he has with Blake. And this time through, the first time I saw it, I don't think I appreciated the relational element of this movie as much. This time through, it felt way more relational than it had. There's that piece of youth with Blake that you don't have with Schofield, even though they both look to be the exact same age. And that was wild to me, how young they looked. And, there's all sorts of things that, talk about sending off our young men to war. Like, I don't know if I'm just getting older. I'm 34 now. They looked like children, like maybe 20 years old.
Yeah. Well, and we can talk about the performances when we get back from break. I will say right up front, though, George Mackay, I think, is a perfect leading man for this movie. And how do I say this about someone's looks? He looks like pictures I've seen of World War I veterans. Like, there's a famous one that's floated around of, like, what a guy looked like before he went into the trenches, and then the picture they took of him like 4 years later, and he just has, like, these hollowed out eyes with that 1,000-yard stare. It's a combination of just his facial structure and the makeup in the movie, but, like, he has that. And when they show him at the beginning of the movie, you can already tell just by the way he's presented to us looks-wise, this is a guy who has seen some shit. And I think that there's a real authenticity there that, you know, his partner doesn't have, because he's like a much more fresh-faced, you know, and Schofield even tells him, like, you weren't there when we went through this horrific battle. I'm telling you, dude, it's not fun, right? And I think that the character design really helps that.
Absolutely. I couldn't get over the fact that I felt like George Mackay looked so much like Alan Ruck from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, interesting.
Like, there was something about his facial shape that I was just like, oh yeah, this is like if, you know, Cameron got stuck in World War I.
There's an actor who's come up the past couple years who's gotten like moderately famous working in indie movies that have made a big splash. His name's Harris Dickinson, and he's like 6'2" and a supermodel basically. But he is like, I think he's trying to market correct George Mackay in real time. And George Mackay has also been trying to like make a name for himself in indie movies. And it's really fascinating to watch the two of those guys get put in movies since 1917. I really liked George Mackay in this movie. I'm wishing good things for his career. Like I said, Brad, let's dive into the specifics of the performances after the break. But talking about war movies and how stressful they are has really made me want to take a drink. What do you say we try this Hirsch Departure single malt?
Oh, I found a few facts about the amount of alcohol that was like prescribed to soldiers. And like, dude, if you were about to go over the line, it was like a double ration per day for like the 3 days leading up to it.
As it should be.
Oh man, let's drink some whiskey, dude.
Hey there, travelers. Kaylee Cuoco here. Sorry to interrupt your music, great artist BT Dubs, but wouldn't you rather be there to hear it live? With Priceline, you can get out of your dreams and into your dream concert. They've got millions of travel deals to get you to that festival, gig, rave, sound bath, or sonic experience you've been dreaming of. Download the Priceline app today, and you can save up to 60% off hotels and up to 50% off flights. So don't just dream about that trip. Book it with Priceline.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
This episode is brought to you by Max, presenting HBO original comedy special, Brett Goldstein, The Second Best Night of Your Life. Emmy-winning actor, writer, and comedian Brett Goldstein brings his irresistible charm and quick wit stateside for his first ever HBO stand-up special. Goldstein sheds his testy Roy Kent facade to share his hilarious insights on love, sex, masculinity, and more. Brett Goldstein, The Second Best Night of Your Life. Now streaming exclusively on Max.
All right, so today we're looking at Hirsch Selected Whiskey's The Departure. This is an American single malt whiskey. It is the first single malt released by the Hirsch Company, which is owned by Hoteling and Company, an importer and distiller based out of San Francisco. They are very popular in the American craft whiskey scene. They were known for a long time for their Old Potrero line. There's a ton of backstory on Hoteling if you want to read about it. I found a very long article. That was super enlightening to me, but probably not necessary to share the entire history of this company on our podcast, except to say, Brad, this is the first Hirsch product we've had. Like I said, they're known for their rye whiskey, so we're joining them as they start to branch out into other things. So it's kind of cool because I don't know how much of a departure this actually is for them because I'm not even familiar with their ryes.
The real question is, could you tell the entire history of their brand in one take?
No, I could get close though.
Oh,
it's very interesting. Yeah. There's breweries in their past. There's name changes. There's different labels. They've moved locations. Lots going on over there at Hoteling.
So it sounds like half the new distilleries.
Yeah, pretty much, man. It says in their press release that they started working on this product back in 2015 because they have been wanting to work with barley for a long time. So this is 10 years in the making. It's obviously not a 10-year age-stated product, Brad. It's non-age stated. It is 100% malted barley, though. I'm excited to dive in, man. American single malt is really growing these last few years, and this is just another welcome addition for me.
Absolutely. I love seeing American distilleries dive into new areas like American single malt. I think it's a brand worth pursuing. And I'm excited to go over this Hirsch with you, Bob. I've already tried it, and I'm pretty impressed overall. That's my initial impression.
All right, so here's what I'm seeing about it, Brad, and this is the last thing I'll say before we actually dive in. I see two different quotes. One of them says that the departure was aged for 6+ years in 24-month air-dried 53-gallon American oak barrels. And then it also says that it's double distilled in copper pot stills and aged for 6 years and 9 months in new char number 3 and toasted American oak barrels. So there we go. 6 years, 9 months, 2 kinds of barrels. Let's freaking dive in, Brad. It definitely smells like American craft whiskey on the nose. And if you've been a fan of craft whiskey, you know exactly what I mean. Even at 6 years old, there's quite a bit of graininess to this. There's quite a bit of raw grain, and it smells a bit young. I get a bit of yeast on this. But other than that, this is right in line with what we've come to expect from American craft whiskey, I would say.
Absolutely. I think the nose has a lot of barley. It reminds me of like Cheerios. There's a little bit of like a cherry, stone fruit, cordial kind of vibe. It gets a little bit nutty for me. There's some almonds going on here. I really like this. For me, it's not especially crafty,
I agree.
if you will. It has a little bit of that craft whiskey vibe, but not nearly enough to derail it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 on the nose.
Yeah, I think I'm at a 7.5, but this is very positive because, and I don't know if it's just because they're used to working with rye, which is a very tricky grain to work with, but this has that sort of youthful note on the nose, but underlying it, they've gotten some really nice baking spices. There's a lot of caramel here. It smells like a sweeter rye whiskey on like what's underlying that grain. I get a little bit of like oat as well, which is a grain that we don't often get in our mash bills, but Cheerios was a really good note here, Brad. It's both like a little bit yeasty bready, but also like a sweetened breakfast cereal. 7.5, I think, is a good baseline for this.
When I got into the palate, all the things we talked about were there. The fruitiness turned into like an apricot vibe. There's a little bit of cocoa. The overwhelming note I got on the palate was green tea.
Oh, interesting.
This thing was like a green tea bomb with like a little bit of a glaze of kind of like a caramelized apricot, like jam almost. A really interesting combination of like a fruity green tea.
Yep.
I thought it was very fascinating. Not necessarily like my favorite flavor wheelhouse. Green tea is not my go-to. But I do still like it. I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10.
I really like this, man. I'm not getting the green tea. And let me ask you this, because, you know, tea is often used to explain to people like what tannins are and how a wine or a whiskey can have that tannic effect where it kind of sucks the moisture out of your mouth. Did you have that effect drinking it, or was it more just flavor?
No, it was just the flavor.
Okay.
It really reminded me. Back when I lived in Philly, I would occasionally drink green tea because that's the only thing we had in the house. And I didn't dislike it. Like, it was good enough that, you know, you had a little honey in there, and it's a nice winter drink. It's just not my favorite. It's not in my wheelhouse preferred. So the flavor was there. Not my favorite, but it was definitely noticeable for me.
I really like this, man. And I'm not quite getting the same notes you are. I'm not getting as much stone fruit, and I'm definitely not getting green tea. Your note of cocoa, I think, is like the predominant thing for me. I want to say, 4 or 5 seasons ago, we tried a specialty bourbon from Woodford Reserve that was made with what they called like chocolate malt. And I don't remember getting a lot of chocolate on that, but that's kind of what this is for me. It's chocolate malt. It's lots of interesting grains coming out. I'm getting that oat again. I'm getting like when we first tried Watershed Distillery and they were using spelt. Like, it just tastes like a bunch of funky grains went into this. I know they obviously didn't, but it has that sort of vibe where it's like, this is something completely different flavor-wise, and we've layered over that really dark cacao nibs and then like a ton of cinnamon and like cayenne pepper. It's almost like a Mexican hot chocolate, but unsweetened, and then like layered over raw grains. Super good. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 on the palate, Brad. And then on the finish, I think it's more of the same. It's a really mouth-watering finish. There's a ton of tingle on the tongue with this. Like, it's real spicy. And
You like
coming
that
in,
tingle, don't you, Bob?
yeah, I do, man. It comes in at 98 proof, and I think it drinks actually a little bit hotter than that. Not in a bad way, but you could have convinced me this was like 105, 107 proof. I'm a huge fan of this, Brad. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 again on the finish.
I'm with you on the finish. 8 out of 10. For me, the barley really like sits there and just lingers for a long time. The apricot sticks around. The green tea sticks around. The cacao almost turns into like a creamy dark chocolate. The longer it sits on my palate, which I really like. So like I said, I'm an 8 out of 10 there. Balance wise, I think I'll give it a 7.5. I think that this takes you on a very interesting journey. I don't know if it all works perfectly together, but I do like where it takes me overall. So 7.5 for me on balance.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 7.5 as well. And I don't think that it's an indicator that like anything's off here. And what I really love about American single malt, Brad, is that from distillery to distillery, it's almost like, I don't know, like when you go to a winery and you're like, what's your house wine, right? Like, what do you make here? What's your specialty? There's a distinct flavor and taste. And I don't know if it's a terroir thing, but like from the ones we've tried from up in like Oregon, Washington, to this one in San Francisco, to some on the East Coast, they're just very different flavor profiles. And I like that a lot. And this is carving out its own unique niche. So I'm giving it a 7.5 here. Now on the value, the MSRP on this is $74.99, which is a little bit pricey for a 6-year whiskey. But again, single malt is tricky to work with. It's a new entry in America, relatively new, obviously. I don't think this is exorbitant. I think I'll give it a 7 out of 10 on value.
I'm right there with you. 7 out of 10. This is a really interesting whiskey that I love being curious about whiskeys, Bob. It's been a while since we had a whiskey that really piqued my curiosity. I'm coming to a 38 out of 50.
I'm in the same spot, 38. I think that if I have to give a caveat on this is the kind of whiskey that you and I pull off the shelf because it's like a fascinating whiskey. Like we've tried 500 or 600 whiskeys over the course of this podcast. This one I'm going to remember, right? Not because it's bad, but it's just different.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would give this to somebody who's getting into like single malt of any variety for the first time. It's not it's just not a good entry point because it's so far outside the wheelhouse of what you typically expect. All that said, I'm nearing a 40 on this. This is like a no-brainer thumbs up for me. If you get a chance to try this and you're feeling adventurous, I go all the way in on this, man.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. This is a really interesting whiskey. Hirsch, I think, has departed well. At the very least, the beginning of their adventure is going well. So, well done, Hirsch. The Departure American Single Malt is a product to be proud of.
The fact that this wasn't available when we reviewed The Departed is criminal, honestly.
It is very unfortunate.
Making up for it, though, is the fact that we have a pretty good movie today in 1917. Let's get back to talking about that, Brad.
Let's do it.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Boxing's biggest weekend is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook is bringing the heat. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's right, $5 gets you $200 to play with. Cash in on boxing's biggest weekend ever with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use promo code FIELDGOAL. That's promo code FIELDGOAL to unlock $200 in bonus bets when you place a $5 bet with promo code FIELDGOAL. Only on DraftKings. The crown is is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
All right, everybody. That was Hirsch, the Departure American Single Malt, a whiskey that makes me want to drink more American single malts, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Not that my desire could have already gotten much higher, but man, I'm excited.
Yeah, I liked that a lot, man. I do wish we had found something a little more European to pair it with. This is like the second week in a row that I've said something like that. It's also the second week in a row, Brad, that we've had a movie shot by Roger Deakins. I didn't even think about that till just now. Prisoners, and then this.
The Deeks.
The Deeks. Am I right?
What a great cinematographer.
Yeah.
He
like,
really does just create beautiful movies.
You know what I create? That is Things of Beauty is my record at the end of every season at our next game, Brad, which we call Two Facts.
Every season.
2 Facts and a Falsehood.
Brad is gonna try to stump you, Bob, to alright and what is wrong. 2 Facts and a Falsehood.
2 Facts and a Falsehood is the part of the show where Brad presents me with 3 items as fact about the making of this movie, one of which is a complete lie. Now, I am coming off of a win last week, but I'm still trying to balance out the 2 losses I got the week prior due to our friend Patrick Willems absolutely leading me astray.
On one of the greatest, most well-written falsehood in the history of the podcast.
I know, man. We actually had somebody write into us to tell us what a good job you did, and I was like, don't stroke his ego, because then he's going to start putting effort into this, and I don't want him to do that. I want my record to be unblemished.
I'm excited to blemish your record again, Bob.
All right, man. Hit me with those 2 facts and a falsehood.
Fact number 1. In order to hide the small edits throughout the film, director Sir Sam Mendes, we haven't mentioned that yet, Bob.
Oh, is he a sir?
He is.
How can you argue with the Queen of England knighting this man?
That's right.
You can't say he's a bad director once he's been knighted.
He might have been knighted by the king. You never know.
True. That's true.
Maybe it's a recent titular addition. Right. In order to hide the edits throughout the film, director Sir Sam Mendes chose to use only 2 lenses throughout the movie, the 35mm for close-ups and some dialogue, and the 24mm for the majority of the wide-angle arrays. Fact number 2, throughout the shoot, the production had 4 basic rigs that were always at the ready to be able to take advantage of the changeable weather conditions, as well as having a chief meteorologist on location the entire film. Fact number 3, this was the first prestige war film to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects in nearly 50 years. The last prestige war films to be nominated were Patton from 1970 and Tora 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 from 1970, with the latter film taking the prize.
While you were reading fact number 1, I was looking up when Sam Mendes got knighted. 2019.
Okay.
So it was the Queen.
It was
Her
the
Majesty, a very astute woman. Yeah. So I need you to reread the back half of fact number 1 for me real quick. Something about millimeters is all I heard.
He only used 2 lenses throughout the film to keep continuity. Basically.
Oh, nice.
The 35 for close-ups and dialogue, the 24 for like wide-angle stuff.
Okay, let's see. I think number 2 sounds true enough. Number 3 sounds a little bit dicey to me. I can't remember much of the movie Patton. I don't think it had very many visual effects in it. Maybe it did. Maybe it was just
the opening speech in Patton.
Yeah. Then you come to find out that flag entirely CGI. That's what got it nominated.
Yep. That was it.
Was Saving Private Ryan nominated for visual effects? I don't think so. I think it's either 1 or 3. I'm leaning towards 3, but I'm also wondering how Roger Deakins could have switched lenses during long takes, even if he is floating into a close-up or panning back out. You know what? No, I'm going to say number 1 is the Falsehood. I have no idea if that's true or not, but I'm going to stick with number 1, Brad.
Bob, you are 100% correct.
Yes!
Deakins used one lens for the entire film,
Yeah.
being a 40 millimeter lens.
That makes sense, because otherwise you'd just see a hand come in front of the camera from time to time. Pop the lens off. It's the hand of God just floating in to reorient us here. All right, cool. So I am back in the win column. I've balanced out Patrick's mistakes. Once again, Patrick Willems, you are on the thinnest of ice, sir. Brad, let's get back into talking about 1917. And it seems weird to talk about performances because this is just such a, let's follow some guys walking across a field kind of movie.
Yeah, they could have put you and I in there, and it would have been just as good of a movie.
I mean, George Mackay is in every second of this movie. So, it's worth talking about. I think he gives a really, really good performance because at no point was I ever like, this guy seems like he's acting or he didn't nail that emotional note. And I think for somebody to play the spectrum of all the emotions he has to go through, that's a pretty big feat of acting.
Dude, he nails it.
Yeah.
I think Dean Charles Chapman is pretty good. I don't really have any complaints with him, but he didn't blow me away. I think Mackay has you said it earlier, man, his face is haunted. Mm-hmm. And it's not just, he's not just experiencing he hasn't become cynical. It's not just it's ingrained in his face, but you see the terrible things that happen to him on this specific mission and journey, deepen the horror. They take what he's already experienced and make it worse. And by the end of the film, you feel that in every inch of his body language, his eyes, his face. Mm-hmm. And yet, the youth of Blake seems to give him a little bit of hope as well. Mm-hmm. And he plays all of that just incredibly well.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that the film is at its weakest when it gives anyone else a line of dialogue beside those two people. Especially the decision to put prominent British actors in kind of 4 of the main roles of authority in the movie. So you've got Colin Firth shows up at the very beginning to give the orders. Then he runs into Andrew Scott right before they go up into no man's land. And then halfway through the movie, they run across Mark Strong. And then at the end of the movie, you get Benedict Cumberbatch. And I think that having those 4 people who are extremely recognizable people at this point show up throughout the film really took me out of it. I think the only one that didn't was Colin Firth because it's the very beginning of the movie. So you're just like, oh, there's Colin Firth, and now he's gone.
You don't have the Matt Damon effect.
No, you don't, man. And especially I think Andrew Scott as the guy who's F this, go into no man's land if you want to. He was just a little bit outside of the comfort zone of what Sam Mendes was directing. He went a little too Moriarty for me. And it really pulled me out of that scene. And I just kind of wish that Mendes had gone with everyone in this movie is an unknown or at best a that guy and not a person that I know their full name.
Yeah. And honestly, Mark Strong was that for me, where I he's not a famous enough movie actor for me to be oh, of course, Mark Strong from these 7 movies. Mm-hmm. His voice was familiar and powerful enough that I thought he was the best of the 4 known actors because he has so much compassion even as he is leading. I thought he knocked it out of the park. Other than that, I felt like all of them overacted and were doing too much. Mm-hmm. Colin Firth was fine. I agree that he benefits from being so early on that you don't, it's oh yeah, a movie star in a movie. Wow. Mm-hmm. It's when you get to Benedict Cumberbatch that I'm okay, there's a million no-name actors that you could have put here,
Right.
saved a bunch of money, and they could have gotten a little notoriety.
Mm-hmm.
Like Benedict Cumberbatch didn't need this role, and the movie didn't need him in the role.
Okay, I was not intending to ask a question this spicy today. Are we entirely sure that Benedict Cumberbatch is like a great actor? And here's why I asked that.
The Between Two Ferns take.
Well,
if you didn't have a British accent, would everybody realize that you're a terrible actor?
He's so good in Sherlock, but I think that he has to be in a very outsized theatrical performance that calls attention to himself. Not that he has an oversized acting style, but I just never feel like he's playing a believable human being. I think he'd be really good doing like Shakespeare. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah,
when you do like Hamlet or Macbeth nowadays, you're not just trying to embody the character of Hamlet or Macbeth. You're also like entering into this meta conversation of like actors doing Macbeth. And so you're like, wow, I'm watching something big right now. I think he'd be good at that. But when you put him in a role like this, it's like, oh, he's just kind of trying to do like the Benedict Cumberbatch, a little bit too theatrical type performance. And I don't know that I've ever seen him in a movie where I've been like, wow, that is an incredible performance from Benedict Cumberbatch.
Here's the thing, though. I will come to Benedict's defense for this film specifically. Let's just imagine something, Bob. Will you go with me somewhere in your imagination?
Sure.
Just imagine Benedict is sitting down in the chair, getting his makeup put on, costume design, all the things. And Sam is standing between him and the mirror. And he's like, all right, Benedict, we're going to take it easy. We're not going over the top. You're just going to be a firm commander who wants to end the war. You really believe in what you're doing. You're disappointed by what, Mackay brings you. Sound good? And Benedict's like, yeah, you got it, man. And then he walks away from the mirror and Benedict sees the final product and he has that giant, stupid scar across his eye.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell me that you're not going to overact if they put the most obvious scar I've ever seen in a movie on your face.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
As soon as I saw that in the mirror, I'd be like, all right, I'm ready for this.
Yeah, you can't put a scar on my face like that and expect me not to be like, Mufasa.
Just chew scenery.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for joining me in Imagination Station.
I appreciate that, man. Is there anybody else from the cast that you think is worth mentioning? I feel like we've kind of knocked it out talking about the two leads here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has enough time. Whoever they chose to sing that song in the middle of it, no idea who it is, but man, that dude could belt it. And that was truly, I think that's where this movie succeeds, Bob. It's in those a few small, quiet moments where you just get to see Mackay be broken and horrified. Mm-hmm. And like the juxtaposition of the horrors that he has seen humans do to each other with the beauty that humans can bring into the world with music like that. It's like moments like that is where this movie just is incredible.
Yeah. I also love the idea of, you don't find out anything about George Mackay's character. And there's a moment where he has to escape some Germans in this shelled out town. And he ducks into this like underground apartment, basically, that's been hollowed out as well. He runs into this French lady who's nursing a baby. And she asks him, like, do you have children? And he just doesn't answer her. And he continues babbling with the baby. At the very end of the movie, he finally is like in safety for a moment, finds himself another tree to sit down at, pulls out the picture of his children and his wife that just says, like, come back to us on the back. And your boy was overwhelmed with emotion. But yeah. I love the narrative decision to make this kind of like a closed loop circuit, right? Like it ends exactly where it started, implying that like 5 minutes from now, after this guy wakes up from his nap, he's right back into it again. And I think that's where the movie succeeds. Does it get a little bit on the nose sometimes with the, like, I'm going to tell the French baby the nursery rhyme about they went to sea in a sieve? Like, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Does it get a little bit on the nose in singing the hymn about going over Jordan? Sure, why not? But like, I think at the end of the day, man, gimmick or no gimmick, this is a really powerful and affecting movie.
It absolutely is. There's so many moments throughout this film that you just feel your emotions rise, from the quiet moments that we just talked about to the trailer, him running down the front line as thousands of British troops are going across. What a stunning piece of filmmaking. Like, Mackay is just getting trucked by these other dudes, and he just keeps getting up and running, and the music has swollen, and it's beautiful, and there's explosions everywhere. Like, how can you not watch that and not feel moved?
100%. There are two key moments for me in this movie that I just feel like are absolute knockout sequences. And that the one is that ending sequence, because, you know, because of the suspense that's built throughout the movie, it really feels like almost like a 4-quarter game of football or basketball or whatever, where it's like, we just need one final push here. And you're really on the edge of your seat waiting for that final moment. But the other one for me is, he's gone to this shelled out French town and got grazed by a bullet, fell down a flight of stairs and blacks out. And it's the only time in the movie where there's an extended, sequence of black or a cut. And then he wakes up, and as soon as he wakes up, that Thomas Newman score kicks in with almost like a xylophone, I think. And it's the score that follows him all through this escape from this town as the flares are going off. And that piece of music is just unbelievable, dude. It's so
gorgeous.
Good. This lost the Oscar for best score to the score from Joker, which is, to me, an okay score. Certainly distinct. But I thought this was like one of the best Thomas Newman scores I've ever heard. And I freaking love that centerpiece piece of music as well.
Yeah, if you're just making it a competition between this and Joker, that's a joke. Like,
I feel like
no
that's
chance.
That's what I say when anybody compares any movie to Joker. So, it's not much of a competition to me, man.
Oh, totally, dude. Yeah, the music in this movie, the composition is just beautiful.
And it feels like a movie. Like, the costuming is unreal, and the cinematography is amazing, and the set design. Like, there's a combination of when they're first walking through the trenches, and even when they get into like the empty German front line, and you can see like the wood that they've used to shore up the side of the trenches, and it's kind of like mildewy and wet, and like the color of it is so incredible the way Deakins has captured it. But then just like the way that they erected this French town that is half shelled out, it's just like, this feels like a big production. And I think that's where a guy like Mendes doesn't get enough credit, is especially between this and Skyfall. Like, you can see every dollar of the budget on screen.
Easily. It's a beautiful movie. Like, there are some issues with storytelling and some of the characters, but overall, man, 1917 is easily one of the best movies of 2019. And that's in a stacked cast.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's get into our last segment of the day, which we call Let's Make It a Double.
We're near the end of the episode, so thanks for listening to the Film and Whiskey Show. Let's pair another film with this one, even if it's a struggle. It's our final segment of the day, now let's make it a double.
Let's Make It a Double is presented by Blackwood Distilling Company. It's the part of the show where we pick a movie to pair up with this one to make the perfect double feature. I think today, Brad, would I love to pair this with another one-shot movie, sure, or another war movie, but the one that stuck out to me went back to that scene with the cherry blossoms as a metaphor for the grace and peace that is lost in the fog of war. And there's another movie that features cherry blossoms quite prominently, especially from the great Japanese actor Ken Watanabe, and that is the film The Last Samurai. I don't know if it's a movie that you've ever seen.
Ooh.
I freaking loved that movie when I was growing up.
How have we not watched that?
I don't know.
I loved that movie too.
When he just says they're all perfect. Oh, dude, so good. So yeah, I'm gonna use the cherry blossom analogy and pair this up with The Last Samurai.
I think that's a great pick for our double feature. We should watch The Last Samurai sometime, dude.
Yeah, we really should.
Oh, man. Although do I remember correctly, it's like 3 hours long?
Yeah, but it's 3 hours of Tom Cruise, your favorite human being.
Yeah, no, I'm in.
I'm already bought in. Don't oversell.
I'm already bought in. I think I'm going to pair this with Paths of Glory.
Oh, good one.
I think that both of them kind of highlight the human cost of war, the futility of the military brass thinking they know everything. There just seems like there's a lot of good comparisons here. I know that Mendes used Paths of Glory in some of his, lead up preparation to make 1917.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my pick.
I mentioned this movie before on one podcast or another, Brad, but there's a great documentary that Peter Jackson did in the 2010s around this time called They Shall Not Grow Old, where he and his team took a bunch of old footage and I think through AI, restored it, upscaled it to 4K, colorized it, read the lips of the people in the footage, found people from those same areas of England to like overdub what they were saying. And it just becomes this historical document of like taking this old conflict of war and really bringing those people into the present. And I was blown away by that documentary. Like I said, there's not enough World War I content anyway. So if you're curious to watch more World War I stuff, you could do a lot worse than checking out Paths of Glory and the documentary They Shall Not Grow Old.
I have not gotten around to those documentaries. It's like been on my list for a long time that I really want to watch them.
Yeah, it's super good. You should check it out, man. Well, okay, those are our pairings for Let's Make It a Double. Like we said, presented by Blackwood Distilling Company. No matter what you choose to pair this movie up with, you can always make it a double with Blackwood. And if you go to bourbonoutfitter.com/filmwhiskey and use our code FILMWHISKEY at checkout, you can save on your bottle of Blackwood as well. Brad, it's time to get into final scores here. For most of this film, I was at like an 8.5, maybe a 9. I do think that like it is a handsomely mounted film that feels like it just falls short of greatness for most of the runtime. And then the ending happened, and I was like, this solved every issue I had with this movie. I think I'm going to come all the way up to a 9.5 out of 10 on this one, Brad.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm kind of between an 8.5 and a 9. I think originally I was at like an 8 out of 10 when I first saw it. I think I'll come up to a 9 out of 10. I don't know if this is quite, it's just not quite at that level of perfection that you need to be at to hit that 9.5, 10 range. But there's so much to love about this movie. And I would agree with you. I think it's a little bit ridiculous that the critics just don't like Sam Mendes. Like at the end of the day, sure, some of their complaints might be accurate, but he makes incredible movies. And in an era where it seems like the quality of filmmaking is going down, I can't see how they are not self-defeating and destroying their own industry when they nitpick about movies like 1917.
Yeah, man. I think you've summarized it perfectly. So it's a 9.25 out of 10 for us on average. But we'd like to know what you think. Did 1917 accomplish everything you thought it should? Are you with us on the over 9 scale, or did it not quite click for you? You can let us know on any of our social media accounts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at Film Whiskey.
Or if you'd like to, you can join the conversation on our Discord server, where we are there every day talking about movies and whiskey and all sorts of other things. So if you'd like to join the conversation, you can find a link at the end of every single one of our show notes.
We have but 3 episodes remaining on the season, Brad, and we're going to shift into animated film next week to check out one of my very favorites from this century. It's DreamWorks' 2010 film, How to Train Your Dragon. I'm excited to dive into that one with you, man.
Yeah, super pumped, dude. It's going to be fun.
All right. Join us next week for that. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.